March 6, 2024, a quiet suburban street in Barrhaven, Ottawa. A man walks through his front door after a long day at work, only to step into a nightmare. His wife, gone. His 4 children, lifeless. And in the middle of it all, a 19-year-old house guest standing in the shadows. What happened inside this home was not a break-in. It wasn't a random act of violence. It was something far more chilling. This wasn't supposed to happen, not here, not to them. But within hours, police would uncover a truth so disturbing it would send shockwaves across Canada. Who was Fabrio Dea? Why did he do it? And what was the last thing those children saw before their lives were taken? Tonight, we uncover the horrifying details of the Barrhaven family massacre, one of the most shocking crimes in Canadian history. Stay with me. In the summer of 2023, Danushka Wickrem Asinghe made a decision that would change his family's life forever. Leaving behind the familiarity of Sri Lanka, he arrived in Canada with a dream of safety, stability, and a better future for his wife and their 4 young children. He wasn't alone in this journey. Like many immigrants before him, he carried with him hope, determination, and an unshakable belief that this new country would offer his family the opportunities they deserved. Barrhaven, a quiet and family-organized suburb of Ottawa, Ontario, became their new home. Lined with tree-shaded streets and rows of neatly kept houses, it was the perfect place to start fresh. Known for its low crime rates and tight-knit community, it was a neighborhood where doors were left unlocked, children played freely in front yards, and families came together for weekend barbecues. Danushka wasn't a wealthy man, but he was a hard-working, doted father who did everything he could to provide for his loved. He arrived first, alone, to set up a stable foundation, working long hours, saving every dollar, making sacrifices so that when his family joined him, they wouldn't have to struggle. By the end of summer 2023, his wife, 35-year-old Darshani Dilantika Ekanayake, arrived in Canada with their 4 children. Their oldest son, Inuka, was only 7 years old, just beginning to explore the world. His sister, Ashwini, was 4, full of curiosity and energy. Little Renaya, barely 2, was still learning to speak in full sentences. And the youngest, baby Kelly, was only 2 months old, completely dependent on her parents for love and care. The Wickrem Asinghe family wasn't just another immigrant family. They were deeply connected to their community, actively involved in local events, and valued by their neighbors. Danushka found work and built friendships, while Darshani, a dedicated mother, focused on raising the children in their new home. Their children were enrolled in school at Monsignor Paul Baxter Catholic School, a local elementary institution known for its welcoming atmosphere. Inuka, the eldest, was in grade 2. He was bright, eager to learn, and already making friends. His little sister Ashwini had just started junior kindergarten, adjusting to her new surroundings with the natural innocence of a child. The Wickrem Asinghes were also devout Buddhists and found comfort in their faith. They regularly attended Hilda J. Wardnarama Buddhist Monastery, a place where many Sri Lankan immigrants gathered to pray, meditate, and share meals. It was here that they formed deeper connections, bonding with other families who had also come to Canada in search of a better future. To everyone who knew them, they were the embodiment of kindness and generosity. Despite their own challenges, the Wickrem Asinghes believed in helping others. They knew what it was like to be new in a foreign land, to feel lost, to struggle to find a sense of belonging. So when 19-year-old Fabrio Dea, a fellow Sri Lankan student, needed a place to stay, they welcomed him into their home with open arms. Dea had come to Canada 2 years earlier to pursue his studies at Algonquin College. At first, he stayed with relatives, but as time went on, he needed a new place to live. Danushka, seeing a young man in need, didn't hesitate. He invited Dea to live with them, not as a stranger, but as part of the family. It was a gesture of goodwill, a testament to the Wickrem Asinghe family's kindness and hospitality. They offered him a home, a place of warmth and support. But little did they know, they had just welcomed the person who would later take everything from them. Inside their modest home on Berrigan Drive, life was simple but filled with love. Danushka would leave for work early in the morning, often returning home late at night, exhausted but proud. Darshani, ever the devoted mother, spent her days taking care of the children, packing school lunches, attending parent meetings, soothing baby Kelly when she cried in the middle of the night. Weekends were spent together, whether at the monastery, visiting friends, or simply enjoying a quiet evening at home. Their dream was coming true, slowly but surely. They had overcome the hardest part, leaving their homeland and starting over. They had plans for the future, hopes that their children would grow up safe, educated, and surrounded by opportunity, a better life. But all of it, every sacrifice, every dream, every moment of love, would be wiped away in a single night. The horror that was about to unfold inside that house would leave an entire nation in shock. The father, who worked tirelessly to build a home, would return one evening to find everything he loved destroyed, and the young man they had once welcomed like family, he would become the face of one of the most horrifying crimes in Canadian history. At the center of this incomprehensible tragedy stands Fabrio Dea, a name that, before March 6, 2024, was virtually unknown outside his small circle. But in the wake of 6 brutal murders, the question that haunts investigators and the public alike is, who was Fabrio Dea, and what could have possibly driven him to commit such a horrifying act? To understand the crime, we must first understand the man behind it. Fabrio Dea was born in Sri Lanka, a country known for its rich culture, warm communities, and a history marked by political and social upheaval. While little is publicly known about his exact upbringing, what we do know is that he came from a background that, at least on the surface, did not suggest any violent tendencies. He was described by those who knew him as a quiet and reserved individual, someone who kept to himself, not particularly social, but seemingly harmless. His aunt, Anusha Dea, who would later provide critical insight into his character, recalled that Fabrio was a good student, dedicated to his studies, and showed no signs of aggression. So, how does someone go from being a mild-mannered young man to an alleged mass murderer? The timeline of his life in Canada may hold the answers. At just 19 years old, Fabrio left Sri Lanka and moved to Ottawa, Canada. A monumental shift for any young adult. He initially lived with his aunt, Anusha, who provided him with a place to stay and acted as his guardian in this foreign land. During this time, he enrolled in Algonquin College, one of Ottawa's prominent educational institutions. By all accounts, he was an ordinary international student trying to find his footing in a new country. But something changed. As the months passed, Fabrio began to withdraw from family connections. He stopped talking to relatives back home. He even blocked his own family members on social media, severing ties without explanation. His behavior shifted, but no one saw what was coming next. At some point after arriving in Ottawa, Fabrio Dea crossed paths with Danusha Wickramasinghe, the man who would later become one of his victims. Danusha, a hard-working IT professional, had moved to Canada with his wife Nadika, their 4 young children, and dreams of a better future. He was known for being kind-hearted and generous, a man who, like many immigrants, understood the struggles of starting over in a foreign country. So, when Fabrio found himself without stable housing, the Wickramasinghes did what they had done for others before. They took him in. They offered him a home, a safe space, a family environment. And this wasn't just a temporary arrangement. The Wickramasinghes treated Fabrio like one of their own. Just days before the tragedy, they threw him a birthday party in their home, celebrating his 19th birthday as a gesture of warmth and inclusion. Little did they know that within days, this same young man would take everything from them. Even as the Wickramasinghe family welcomed him with open arms, there were signs, small, barely noticeable cracks in Fabrio's behavior that, in hindsight, may have hinted at something unsettling. He had completely stopped communicating with his aunt, the woman who had originally taken him in. He had become reclusive, avoiding interactions even with extended family. His academic life remained unclear. Was he still attending classes at Algonquin College? Had he dropped out? No one seemed to know for sure. To those around him, it may have seemed like a young man simply adjusting to a new life in a foreign country. But was there something more? Was he battling inner demons? Or was this crime premeditated? An act planned long before the Wickramasinghe family ever invited him into their home. What we know for certain is that the Wickramasinghes showed him kindness until the very end. The birthday celebration, the shared meals, the feeling of trust that they had given him. A trust he would betray in the most horrific way possible. No reports indicate any known conflicts between Fabrio and the family, no evidence of arguments, no history of violent behavior. So the chilling question remains, Why? Why did Fabrio Dea, a seemingly quiet college student with no known criminal record, turn into an accused mass murderer overnight? Was it rage? Was it a mental break? Or was it something even more terrifying? A crime without a clear motive? What happened inside that house on the night of March 6, 2024, shattered a family, stunned a community, and left an entire nation searching for answers. And as we unravel the investigation, one thing becomes painfully clear. This was not just another crime, it was an unthinkable betrayal. Stay with me as we uncover the horrifying details of the investigation, the chilling crime scene, and the unanswered questions that remain. March 6, 2024, started like any other day for the Wickramasinghe family. In their home on Berrigan Drive, in the heart of Bearhaven, a peaceful, family-friendly suburb of Ottawa, Darshani Dilyanthika Ikanyaki prepared breakfast for her children. 7-year-old Inuka, a bright and curious boy, was likely helping his younger sisters, 4-year-old Ashwini and 2-year-old Rinyana, get ready for the day. In the crib, their youngest sibling, Kelly, just 2.5 months old, lay sleeping. Oblivious to the horror that would soon unfold within these walls, as evening fell, the routine continued as usual. The children played, dinner was served, and the family settled into their evening, unaware of the danger that loomed within their own walls. Living with them was 19-year-old Fabrio Dea, a Sri Lankan international student who had come to Canada to study at Algonquin College. He wasn't just a stranger staying with them. He was someone they had taken in. Someone they trusted. There was no public record of conflict, no police reports, no visible red flags that would have warned them of what was about to happen. It is still unclear what triggered the violent outburst that night. Investigators have not disclosed if there was an argument, a sudden fit of rage, or if this was premeditated. But what is clear is that at some point that evening, Fabrio armed himself with a weapon, a sharp, knife-like object, and turned on the very people who had given him a place to stay. At approximately 10:45 p.m., screams pierced the quiet suburban street. In those moments of chaos, the Wickramasinghe home, once filled with the innocent laughter of children, became a house of horror. The first to be attacked was Darshani. As the mother of 4, she would have fought with every ounce of strength she had, trying to shield her children, but she was overpowered. The children, one by one, fell victim to the brutal attack. 7-year-old Inuka, who had his whole life ahead of him, was gone. 4-year-old Ashwini, barely old enough to understand what was happening, never had a chance. Rinyana, just 2, and baby Kelly, only 2.5 months old, were mercilessly taken. A 40-year-old family friend, Amarakun Gamini Amarakun, was also in the home at the time. Whether he tried to intervene or was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, he too became a target. As the attack continued, there was one survivor, Danushka Wickramasinghe, the father. Details of how he managed to stay alive remain unclear, but sources report that he suffered serious injuries in the assault. Somehow, despite his wounds, he either escaped or was spared just long enough to call for help. At 10:52 p.m., Ottawa police received a 911 call. The caller was in distress, his voice frantic. Officers rushed to the scene. When emergency crews arrived at the house on Berrigan Drive, they could not have prepared themselves for what they were about to witness. The quiet, unassuming home in the suburbs now resembled a crime scene out of a nightmare. Inside, the bodies of 6 victims lay lifeless. The smell of blood filled the air. The scene was so horrific that even seasoned homicide detectives later described it as one of the most disturbing in their careers. There, in the midst of it all, was Fabrio Dea. He did not flee, he did not resist arrest. He was taken into custody without incident. Police have not publicly revealed what, if anything, he said in those first moments. The entire community was shaken. Neighbors who had never seen anything unusual about the home now stood outside, watching in stunned silence as police cordoned off the area. How could this have happened? Why would someone so young, a guest in their home, do something so monstrous? By the next morning, news of the massacre had spread. 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder were formally laid against Fabrio Dea. At his first court appearance, he barely spoke, only responding when necessary. His motive remained unclear. Was there a grudge, a mental breakdown, or something else entirely? Authorities began piecing together his past, trying to find an answer to the question everyone was asking: why? As the sun rose over Barrhaven on March 7, 2024, nothing would ever be the same for the community. A family was gone, a father was left to pick up the shattered pieces of his life, and a nation was left searching for answers. This was not a random crime. It was something far more terrifying. The moment first responders stepped into the quiet Barrhaven home, they knew this was no ordinary crime scene. The stillness, the eerie silence, and then the bodies. 6 victims, lifeless, a mother, 4 innocent children, a family friend who had only recently come to Canada. Blood soaked into the floors of what was once a happy home. The scene was brutal, almost incomprehensible, and yet, standing inside that very home, police found someone still alive. A 19-year-old man, silent, still, no attempt to flee, no visible remorse. His name? Fabrio Dea. Investigators quickly secured the crime scene. The father, the only surviving family member, was found outside, injured, in shock, barely able to speak. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, where he would remain in serious but stable condition. Inside, forensic teams worked meticulously, documenting every detail. The victims had been killed with an edged weapon, a knife, possibly more than one. This was not a shooting, but a calculated, up-close massacre. The 6 victims were soon identified. Darshani Banbaranayak Gama Wawe Darshani, Delanthika Ekenyake, 35 years old, the mother, Inuka, 7 years old, Ashwini, 4 years old, Rinyana, 2 years old, Kelly, barely 2.5 months old, Gi Gamini Amarakun, 40 years old, a family friend who had recently come to Canada. All were found inside their home on Berrigan Drive, a quiet suburban street where neighbors were used to the sounds of children playing, not the cries of police sirens. At the center of it all stood a single suspect, Fabrio Dea, a 19-year-old Sri Lankan national, a former Algonquin college student, a house guest who had been living under the same roof as the family. In his early 20s, but who was he really? Investigators discovered that Dea had been in Canada on a student visa, but he was no longer attending classes. Instead, he had been living with the Wickramasinghe family in their home. Did he have a criminal past? No. Had there been any reported conflicts? No known police reports. Was there any clear motive? Nothing immediately evident. Neighbors and friends were stunned. This wasn't a troubled young man with a history of violence. There were no warnings, no threats, no past altercations, at least none that were known. So why? Why would he do this? In most homicide cases, suspects flee, they try to cover their tracks, they panic, but not Fabrio Dea. He was arrested at the crime scene without incident, no struggle, no resistance. He stood there, in the house, waiting. Officers immediately took him into custody, charging him with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. But something about his behavior unsettled investigators. Witnesses reported that he showed little to no emotion, no signs of distress, no panic. Why? Was this premeditated? Did he plan this massacre? Or was it something else entirely? With Fabrio Dea in custody, the Ottawa Police Service's Homicide Unit launched an intensive investigation. Detectives began reconstructing the events leading up to the massacre. What was happening inside that house before the killings? Was there an argument? Was there something building up between Dea and the family? Did anyone notice unusual behavior from him in the days leading up to the crime? They combed through security footage from the neighborhood, searching for any signs of forced entry or suspicious movements. They analyzed his digital footprint, his phone records, social media activity, and any communications leading up to that fateful night. They interviewed neighbors, classmates, and family friends, and yet, nothing. No one could explain why a man who was taken in by this family, who shared meals with them, who lived under their roof, would turn on them in such a horrific way. As the news spread, Barrhaven, one of Ottawa's safest suburbs, was in disbelief. Neighbors who had once seen Darshani playing with her children in the yard now stood in mourning outside the family home. Parents who once felt safe in their own houses now double-checked their locks at night. This wasn't just another crime. This was a massacre. The mayor of Ottawa, Mark Sutcliffe, called it one of the most horrifying events in the city's history. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau addressed the tragedy, expressing his condolences and support for the grieving community. But behind the headlines, behind the police tape, one question remained unanswered. Why? Why did Fabrio Dea do this? And would investigators ever truly uncover the full truth? With Dea in custody, the case would now move to the courts. Would he plead guilty? Would there be a trial? Would he explain himself? Or would this crime remain forever shrouded in mystery? The answers, if they come, will not undo the devastation. A father is left to bury his entire family. A community is left to grapple with a nightmare that unfolded in their own backyard. And 6 innocent lives are lost forever. The tragic events of March 6, 2024 in Barrhaven, Ottawa, sent shockwaves through the local community and the nation at large. The close-knit Sri Lankan community in Ottawa was particularly devastated. Narada Kojitutuwaku, past president of the Sri Lanka Canada Association, expressed the collective grief, stating, "Everybody's shaken. The Sri Lankan community's shaken. The whole of Ottawa is shaken." He emphasized the need for the community to come together, to support the bereaved families, and ensure such tragedies are prevented in the future. In the days following the incident, over 300 residents gathered at a vigil in Pamadeo Park, near the Wickramasinghe family's home. Mourners laid flowers, teddy bears, and heartfelt notes, creating a makeshift memorial. Speakers at the vigil, including members of the Buddhist Congress of Canada, addressed the crowd offering words of solace and unity. One neighbor, Marissa Kumar, tearfully recounted, "My daughter played with their kids a lot. On New Year's at the temple, they were all playing together. So it's really hard to see that this happened." In the aftermath, community leaders emphasized the importance of mental health awareness and the need for accessible support systems to prevent such tragedies in the future. The incident served as a somber reminder of the vulnerabilities that can exist within communities and the critical importance of vigilance and support for those in need. The Barrhaven community, while grappling with the profound loss, demonstrated resilience and unity, coming together to honor the victims and support one another during this challenging time. The tragic events of March 6, 2024 in Barrhaven, Ottawa, left many grappling with a fundamental question: why? As of now, authorities have not publicly disclosed a definitive motive behind the horrific act committed by 19-year-old Fabrio Dea. However, by examining available information and contextual factors, we can explore several potential explanations that might shed light on this senseless tragedy. 1. Psychological factors. Dea, a Sri Lankan national, had been residing in Canada for approximately 2 years. Family members described him as a quiet and good student. However, in the period leading up to the incident, relatives noticed a significant change in his behavior. His aunt, Anusha Dea, noted that he had blocked family members on social media and ceased communication. Such withdrawal can sometimes indicate underlying mental health struggles, including depression, anxiety, or other disorders. It's plausible that Dea was grappling with psychological issues that went unrecognized or untreated, potentially contributing to a deteriorating mental state. 2. Cultural and social isolation. Immigrating to a new country presents numerous challenges, including cultural adaptation, language barriers, and the absence of familiar support systems. Dea's relocation to Canada for studies might have led to feelings of isolation or alienation. His decision to cut off communication with his family could suggest an increasing sense of detachment. Without a robust support network, such feelings can intensify, potentially leading to desperate actions. 3. Interpersonal conflicts. While specific details about Dea's relationship with the Wickramasinghe family remain scarce, it's essential to consider the dynamics within the household. Living as a guest in someone's home can sometimes lead to tensions, especially if there are cultural differences, misunderstandings, or unmet expectations. However, it's worth noting that the Wickramasinghe family was described as compassionate and supportive. They even celebrated Dea's birthday a week before the tragedy, indicating a caring relationship. Despite this, internal conflicts or perceived slights cannot be entirely ruled out as potential triggers. 4. Academic and financial pressures. As an international student, Dea might have faced significant academic pressures, including maintaining grades, meeting expectations, and managing financial burdens such as tuition fees and living expenses. The stress associated with academic performance and financial obligations can be overwhelming, especially without adequate coping mechanisms. If Dea was struggling in these areas, it could have contributed to a sense of hopelessness or desperation. 5. Lack of prior criminal behavior. It's noteworthy that authorities reported no previous interactions with either Dea or the victims, suggesting that he did not have a known history of violent behavior or criminal activity. This absence of prior incidents makes the sudden eruption of violence even more perplexing and may indicate that the motive is rooted in personal or psychological factors rather than a pattern of criminal conduct. While the exact motive behind the Barrhaven tragedy remains elusive, a combination of psychological distress, cultural and social isolation, interpersonal dynamics, and external pressures may have converged, leading to this catastrophic outcome. It's a stark reminder of the importance of mental health awareness, the need for robust support systems for immigrants and international students, and the critical role of early intervention in preventing such tragedies. A crime like this doesn't just end with an arrest. It lingers. It leaves an entire community questioning everything they thought they knew about safety, about trust, about the people closest to them. The Wickramasinghe family was like so many others, immigrants who came to Canada for a better life, building their future in a neighborhood where children played freely and doors weren't always locked before bedtime. But after that night, Barrhaven was never the same. The fear set in. Parents held their children a little closer. Neighbors who once greeted each other warmly now exchanged wary glances. If this could happen here, in a quiet, welcoming home, then could it happen anywhere? And then there's the question of mental health and intervention. Fabrio Dea wasn't an unknown threat. Reports suggest he struggled in school, faced isolation, and had few social connections. But were there warning signs? And if there were, why weren't they caught in time? Did those around him notice something was off? Did he ever seek help? Or worse, did he try but no one listened? This case raises unsettling questions about the cracks in our mental health system. How many potential tragedies go unnoticed every day? How many individuals spiraling into darkness are left without the resources they need until it's too late? And what about the larger conversation on immigration and cultural adjustment? Moving to a new country isn't easy. The Wickramasinghe family came to Canada with hopes for a better future. Dea, too, was an immigrant, studying in a foreign country, away from home, away from familiarity. Isolation, pressure, expectations. Could those have played a role in what happened that night? In the end, this isn't just a crime story. It's a story about people, about families who trust, about a community that now lives with a wound that may never heal. 6 lives were taken in a place meant for love, for laughter, for safety. The house still stands, but inside, the echoes of that night remain. And the one question that haunts everyone who hears this story, could it have been stopped? A father, shattered beyond words, left to grapple with a horror no one should ever face. A mother, 4 innocent children, and a trusted house guest, gone in a matter of moments. A crime that made no sense, yet left a permanent scar on an entire nation. The Wickramasinghe family came to Canada with hopes of a better future, only to have their dreams violently stolen in the place they called home. And as the investigation continues, one question remains: why? What could drive a 19-year-old, welcomed into their home, to commit an act so unspeakable? Was there something missed? A warning sign overlooked? For now, the world may never fully understand what happened behind those walls on March 6, 2024. But one thing is certain: this case serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest threats aren't from the outside, but from the people we trust the most. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think was the real motive behind this horrific crime? And if you want more in-depth breakdowns of real-life cases like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.